Taking Charge with successful businessman, world-renowned speaker, and best-selling author, Mark Januszewski. This is the only podcast where we end the self-help hustle and heartache and arm our listeners with everything they need to access a remarkable power within, a power beyond measure. Mark J. is the creator of the famous Master Key Experience, which publishes annually a success rate of over 98% happier, healthier, and more successful people. Mark co-created the Master Key Experience, combining science and spirituality with his wife, over 30 scientists, and the illuminated ones spanning 4,000 years. You'll quickly discover that there really are no common people. There is greatness within you, and this podcast will help you find and develop your greatness. The best news? It's in you already, and so it's free. I welcome you to our host, Mark J., creator of the Master Key Experience.
Hey, aloha, and welcome to the podcast with Mark J., which is taking charge. In other words, ending the self-help hustle and heartache. So that's really what we're going to talk about. But aloha from beautiful Kauai, Hawaii. And I want to define this word aloha. We start every podcast. We will be starting every podcast that way in the future. What does aloha actually mean? Well, I didn't know until I started living inside my dream and moved here back in 2010. What aloha actually means is alo is really the divine, whatever your definition is for that, God, spirit, energy, universal mind, whatever. But alo is the mind, this great force or the universal mind or God or whatever, the great spirit, and ha is breath. So we hope that the breath of the divine or the spirit will be in your presence when you tune in, and thanks for tuning in. It's just fantastic that you're here. We really appreciate it. We're going to do some really interesting things here, and you've probably been on other podcasts. We hope you have. So you can give us some feedback. What did you like on other things? This isn't going to be your run-of-the-mill thing. We'll tell you right now, this is for adults that really want to take charge of their life. So we're going to define this. What does it really mean, taking charge and getting rid of the heartache and hustle that comes with self-help? Am I going after the gurus and the self-help peddlers? Well, let's talk about that. Absolutely not. Good luck to them. God bless them. That is a $12 billion industry, 12 billion. And in that $12 billion industry, it's a good thing because people are trying to get better. But in that $12 billion industry, with one exception, there is not one from the biggest of the big things, big institutions that purport themselves to create change in people's lives, to the biggest gurus, to the smallest, just getting started 6 months ago, life coaches, okay? Not one, with this one exception, not one of the thousands of them in this $12 billion industry has produced one single set that we know of, that we could find in 11 years of research, quantifiable numbers. How many people got it and how many lives improved? There's one exception, and we'll get into that later. That's not really the point of this, but what is this self-help hustle and heartache? If I'm not going after the gurus, who am I going after? I'm going after you, just like I had to go after me. You see, there's nothing out there, and this has been written about for over 4,000 years. There's nothing out there that's going to fix what's inside that needs to be fixed so the outside world gets a little better for you, for me, for people like Lori or Jay or Danny. Okay, it's an inside job. So the self-help hustle and heartache, how does that actually work? Well, interestingly enough, of course, scientists only recently, and I'll see if I can grab the book before we get off here, only recently have a few scientists agreed that there may be a connection between spirituality and science. Up until that point, science does not want anything to do with spirituality because they say they can't be quantified. And the reality is they have been for over 4,000 years. This is an actual fact. And we'll see in some of the writings that we're going to share with you over the next year plus, where these illuminated ones, people like Socrates and Plato and Buddha and the carpenter from Galilee and Disraeli, and the list goes on and on from Thoreau to Emerson to Hanel. How did they know what was actually going on in your body? And we'll actually show you these writings. It's absolutely amazing. There is a connection between spirit and science, and that place is a really magnificent place. We're going to talk about that. So what is the self-help hustle and heartache? Well, as it turns out, the science is pretty clear. There's two types of people on the planet. Those that have this gene, this genetic predisposition to want to improve. So those of you that were like me, that bought self-help book after self-help book after self-help book, or listened to CD after CD and wanted to improve, and not much changed in your life, and you got a quote or a nugget, but really what changed? The relationships didn't really get any better. They improved a little bit, but then it was back to normal. Your business or your job performance didn't get any better. And, the money didn't get any better. The waistline, got a little smaller, but then it blew back up again. And this breaks our heart, but then it's on to the next trendy thing and the next trendy thing. And my 7 steps to success and my 4 steps and so on and so forth. And it's all nonsense. And we get hustled. We're hustling ourselves because we don't want to look at the evidence of the pattern of trying to improve and being disappointed, trying to improve and being disappointed. And it's because we're looking externally. We're not working on the right stuff. Most of these lessons or books or whatever are write down your goals. What do you really want? Let's see what we got here. I love technical challenges. This is really great on your first one. Okay, I guess we're back on. Yes, are we on, Lori? Yes. Okay. Hi, Jay. Let's see what we got here. Yes? We're good? Okay. So I guess we're back on. We're living on a rock 3,000 miles out to sea. So that'll be one of the exciting things of you adjusting. So what happens with this self-help hustle and heartache is pretty simple. We hustle ourselves. We pick up, like I said, a nugget or two, but nothing really changes. And then we're on to the next thing, which is another book, another trendy thing, but nothing really changes. So that's really what this podcast is really about. And it's not that I found the secret. Folks, there isn't any secret. It's really, there's going to be 2 things that you're going to hear. We're going to have basically about 60 to 70% interviews, people that are successful in sales and online marketing, best-selling authors, musicians, and so forth, that all discovered these 2 simple truths. Number 1, it's an inside job. Okay, the real conversation, and we'll get to that in a second. They had to discover that first. And the second thing is they had to apply it. They had to get off the couch and act on those ideas, because all the knowledge in the world is pointless if you don't apply it. I think Hanel said it better than anybody when he said that he wrote the Master Key system. And what Hanel espoused was that knowledge doesn't apply itself. In the book of James, way back in scripture 2,000 years ago, we find so too as the body without spirit is dead, so too faith without works is dead. If you don't do the work, it's not going to happen. So we're not after the gurus here. Good luck. God bless them. If you think that you're going to go away for a weekend and yell and scream and walk across ice cubes or hot coals or anything else, and everything's going to be all better, good luck. God bless you. This podcast, it simply isn't for you. That's for children that think that they can go trade a cow for magic beans and everything's going to be all better. Okay. If you want to create change in your life, you've got to want it as much as oxygen. And unfortunately, most of us have been conditioned about what our goals should be. They don't have anything to do with what's in your heart. So the real conversation is about the principle of power. there actually exists a power that will transform you so deeply, so much, so magnificently, so beautifully, so elegantly into this incredible, magnificent, loving, caring, productive, plenty of time, plenty of resources, plenty of money, plenty of compassion, empathy, communication skills, virtually overnight in comparison to a lifetime. Where is this power? Well, it's really, for most people, the last place that they would look. And if you think there's a pitch coming, there isn't. That's the point of this podcast. You don't have to spend a dime. It's already in you. You're actually born with it. The hardcore reality is that this is really the awakening of a person, the awakening of the principle of power. And the people that you're going to hear from, I got a guy that's going to be on here in a couple of weeks, John, who was struggling, playing in these tiny little gigs because he loved music. He just went #1 on Billboard. How did he do it? The same way that a gal with 8 kids, a single mother with 8 kids that was failing in network marketing, became in the top 0.1% of earners in the world in less than a year. Now, they might seem completely different, but the principle of power was awakened in them, and that's the real conversation. The institutions from school on have lied to you, telling you you could be anything you want to be, but you better follow the rules like everybody else. And they conditioned all of us to follow. They set the goals for us. They told us what's normal. And your parents, who did the best they could, they were conditioned by the same institutions. Is this a conspiracy show theory and all that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We'll get into that later. All that really matters is that you have a power in you, and I'm going to make the case right now. Buddha made the case, Jesus made the case, Hanel made the case, all the illuminated ones made the case. There are no common people. There is greatness in you, and that's what this podcast is about. And you've got to lay down your past because it's bullshit. All your failures and a life of not having any time in the day that you have filled up, like I did, mostly with nonsense, to have a feeling of being alive, a feeling of accomplishment, but secretly there's a lack of fulfillment and maybe some fear, disappointment, or discouragement about the future. I certainly felt all those things. What changed for me? Well, one document opened everything up for me, and it's not so much it was that document. I was just ready. So, ready for what? Ready for the real conversation, the awakening of the principle of power. There are no common people. Wallace Wattles, Einstein, everyone's a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it's going to feel like an idiot its whole life. Charles Hanel, everyone is a genius when you have a purpose and it's injected with love. A genius is born. And so it goes on and on. And Jesus Christ said, you will do far more than I did. How much more evidence do you need? Well, we were taught at an early age, weren't we? Nobody's perfect. I'm here to tell you, yes, you are. You've just been conditioned to believe that you're not. Now, was some of it done so that you wouldn't feel bad when you made mistakes? I'm here to tell you these are perfect imperfections. And as soon as you stop worrying about get everything right, your life will open up to you in the real conversation. So let's get down to it with a little true story that was a metaphor also that changed my perception, and I hope it changes yours. It seems that some sailors were becalmed, and days went by and they ran out of water and they're dying of thirst. And finally, another boat comes into their vision and they're saying, we need water, we're dying of thirst. And the people on the other boat are yelling, throw down your bucket, throw down your bucket. No, they're in the ocean and they know if they drink salt water, they're going to get really ill. And they say, we're dying of thirst. We're dying of thirst. And from the other boat comes again, throw down your bucket, throw down your bucket. And this goes on and on. So finally, one of the sailors, they're desperate. He throws down the bucket and he pulls it up. Even though they're in the ocean, it's full of fresh water. You see, for days, they had been becalmed out just beyond the mouth of the river, of the Amazon River, which pushed fresh water several miles out to sea. So all this time, they were dying of thirst. They were in this beautiful fresh water. And what I found out about myself and most people is that they don't realize that everything they need to live a great life, to carve an entirely different reality, not improve on the one they have, but an entirely different reality, their heart's desire that's fulfilling and exciting. Yeah, sure, take the things you like with you, but let's create a new reality that's great, that shows your greatness, because there are no common people. And if you're a Christian or like the Christian philosophy, I mean, Jesus was either lying or telling the truth when he said, you'll do more than me. Greater things than I, actually. He was lying or telling the truth. I'm saying he was telling the truth. Buddha was telling the truth. They were all telling the truth. There are no common people. There is greatness in you. And so I said the real conversation is the awakening of the principle of power in man. What is this power? Well, here's the big awakening. Okay. The mechanism between your ears is the greatest mechanism on the planet. Unfortunately, more people know more about their phones, their remote, and their cars now with all the electronic gizmos in them, okay, than they do about the greatest mechanism on the planet that they were given for free. And isn't that the way it is? We value our homes, our cars, and our clothes, and not our body and our mind and our soul. It's just the way it is. The things we were given for free that are remarkable. Let's talk about this. This is perfect. The greatest mechanism on the planet. Look around you. Everything you have on, where you're sitting, everything was first an idea. Everything. This device that you're listening on was first an idea. Everything starts in the mind, was created as a magnificent thing. But unfortunately, as Charles Hannell writes, unfortunately, most people are inexperienced or poor operators of this mechanism. So you need to know how the mechanism works. And that's really what we're going to talk about on this podcast, because the creator, your creator, whatever that is, we're non-denominational here, right? God, universal mind, the source of all good energy, whatever, it's all good, right? If you have different ideas about it, let's let them figure it out up there. Let's just love and respect everybody's point of view here, right? But gave you everything you need and in control. And that control is only over one thing. You don't have control over two things. Sad but true. You don't have control over 5 or 10 things. You have control over only one thing: your mind, your thoughts. That's it. You learn to control your thoughts, you'll start to control the circumstances in your life, because all the circumstances in your life are basically results of the thoughts that you've held. And that's a tough pill for people to swallow. It was a tough one for me to swallow in the early 90s. I wanted to run to, well, what if this happened and what if that happened, or colliding realities hit each other. You know, this wasn't my fault, or if somebody backs into my car, I didn't cause that. The truth is, the circumstances in your life are a direct result of the thoughts that you've been holding. Let's take a waitress in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, we'll say, that's from Minneapolis. She's a waitress in Los Angeles with 2 kids, divorced, single mother, okay? She left Minneapolis when she was 18. She's now 33 years old, right? What happened? Well, she wanted to get in the movies. She got out there, she met a guy, and, they had a couple of kids, didn't work out. And now she's living out of her tip jar. When she was 18, did she think, I'm going to go to Los Angeles, get a job in a diner, and raise two kids by myself, live out of my tip jar week to week? Was that one big decision? No. It was a series of decisions that she made yearly, monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, minute to minute. And where were those decisions made? In her mind. And how were those decisions made? They were made in her subconscious mind by the thoughts that she continually held. Where? In her mind. You have control over one thing. And if you do not pay the price and learn how to control your mind, you'll never change the circumstances in your life. The great philosopher Disraeli wrote, men are not the creatures of circumstances. Circumstances are the creatures of men. And our waitress and your life and my life in 1992 are perfect examples of that. Deny it as I wanted. The two broken marriages, the failed businesses, and everything else, those were all a result of choices that I made consciously and unconsciously. And where were they made? They were made in my mind because I held thoughts. And I'm not talking about the thoughts that we tell other people we believe because we can quote Think and Grow Rich or Zig Ziglar or something like that. I'm talking about the predominant thoughts that run through your mind all day long. There's only two basic types of thoughts, positive and negative, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the mind itself runs on 7 fundamental laws, and you need to learn these laws if you want to learn how to operate the mechanism. So I'm going to give you those 7 laws and tell you the power of them. And the people that you'll hear from over the next couple of years have all mastered them. It's how all of them went from rags to riches. They all have different applications of them, and they've all done different things. Everything from, like I said, network marketers to authors to musicians that are now number one on the charts. Amazing transformations in people's lives. But it's not important what they've achieved. What's important is that they're following their heart's desire. In other words, they didn't come in to this information and apply this information so that they could live in a little better house and pay down their debt. That shit is too small. What is your reality? What is your reality? When you write down goals, when you think about that stuff, if you've been doing that in the past, my suggestion is don't do it anymore because you're doing it from the person that you currently are. And the first thing you have to do is find that magnificent, incredible greatness that's in you. It's in everyone. You were made first class by first class, and you're entitled to go first class as long as you're willing to do a first class job of being in service to other people to create the resources to manifest the things that you want. There's no secret here. Success is service. So I can get into service for people. It's not about competing, it's about collaborating. So let's talk about the 7 laws that run the mind, because now you know that most people, because of our little sailor story, they go through their whole life saying, I'm drowning, I'm drowning. They're saying, I need a better opportunity. I need the right mate. It's the if only thing. If only I was married. If only I wasn't married. If only I had kids. If only I didn't have kids. Everybody's got this huge list of if only, but it's always what? External stuff. There is greatness in you. There are no common people. Be the champion that you were born to be. We all got the shit beat out of us when we went to school. We were told the big lie. The American school systems are based on the Prussian school system. Tell them they can be anything they want to be, but they better follow the rules. And today's schools are even worse because the school system today are intent on producing little consumers. And whatever you do, don't teach them to think. What we want you to do here is start to think. So there's 7 laws that run your mind. And when you master these 7 laws, when you start to understand them, you'll start to understand it is the greatest mechanism. When you start to apply them, and you'll hear this, like I said, from everyone that's on this podcast, we all do the same thing. Do we do it differently? Yeah. We have different things. Yeah. This is the beautiful thing. We're not about cloning here. What we're about is think for yourself. What do you really want? Not what your mommy wants for you, your daddy wanted for you, or the school system, or the government. That none of that matters. So the first law is the law of forgiveness. Okay. Look at the realm of divine ideas. It's all about service. And as long as you have a resentment or anger, no matter what happened to you, you are blocking the channel, the realm of divine ideas. And Genesis says his face moved across the waters. People see that as the subconscious mind and that connection. This is where it all comes from. This is where it flows from. And the source of all good is going to look for the channels that it can create the greatest service through. It can't do it with people that are angry and resentful. Do bad things happen to good people? Yeah. Build a bridge and get over it. It's all about forgiveness, okay? To access the divine and connect the subconscious to the omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, which is in you already, okay? We must forgive everyone and anyone to clear the channel. There can be no connection to others, authentic connection to others or to universal mind, as long as there is anger or resentment against a brother, sister, justified or not. So forgive everyone. That's, you got to have the channel clear. Now, the second law is the law of relaxation. Okay. When people are tense, they're going to do what they know how to do, what they like to do, but mostly what they're familiar doing. Why does that happen? Well, when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, and your parents came in like mine did and read a book to you, you had 30 or 40 books on the shelf. And maybe you have kids and you've experienced the same thing. They want to hear the same book every night. Why do they want to hear the same book every night? Because kids are afraid of the dark. The boogeyman's going to get them, right? And eat their face or whatever their fear is. I know I thought I was going to get eaten. Okay. I don't know why. But anyway, so I had my mother read the same book every night. Okay. And I woke up and my face didn't get eaten off. Next night, same book. Next night, same book. Next night, same book. Face didn't get eaten. Face didn't get eaten. So what happens is it creates this false belief that routine makes us feel secure. And when we grow up, that little child piece is still in there. Now, I'm not talking about the inner child, let the inner child go. Okay, grow up. I'm talking about the effects of being a child. You're not a child anymore. Okay. But since that's how we were conditioned, the things that we're familiar doing, that's what we're going to do. So until you master the law of relaxation, when you get under stress, you're going to do what you've always done. And that's created the conditions in your life. So maybe under stress, you drink or get high, or you scream, or you withdraw. And how's that worked out for you? If it hasn't worked out, you need to master the law of relaxation, because mental effort defeats itself. It's exactly the opposite of physical effort. A relaxed, calm state of mind is the only doorway to making progress mentally. Good tip here is, if you're angry or your feelings get hurt or whatever, in the back of your brain is a little factory called the hypothalamus that releases neuropeptides. And those neuropeptides are, a different one is released for every emotion. But this factory produces gazillions of them, but it can only do it for 90 seconds, and it depletes the supply and then it rebuilds them. So whatever you're feeling is only going to run for 90 seconds. If you're feeling it for more than 90 seconds, it's just in your head. Your body's not feeling it anymore. Great piece of information. If you get pissed or sad, just know, oh, in 90 seconds, this isn't true anymore. what I'm feeling. I'm hanging on to it. And breathe, pray, think of something pleasant instead. The law of practice, you're going to have to practice these 7 laws, the 5 P's. Perfect practice produces, perfect practice prevents poor performance, or persistent practice produces perfect presentations. You are always presenting to you why you are great. You've got to get it, because the world's going to tell you that you suck, and there's a reason for it. And that's what I'm going to have this webcast on. And you need to know what the politicians know. There's something that they know that you don't know that you're going to know at the end of this webcast. And it's going to save you a lot of trouble with yourself. Let's forget about those guys and gals. They don't matter. Okay. Right now, in terms of what I want you to help you do with yourself. By the way, we don't change people's lives here. And companies that say they change people's lives, you should really kind of go the other way. What we do here and what we try to encourage people to do is create an environment where people feel safe to experiment and create change themselves. You create change. Okay. We can create an environment where it's safe for you to do that and give you some ideas, but you're going to create the change within yourself. So we got the law of relaxation. You've got to practice the other 6 laws of the mind. Okay. The law of dual thought and the law of substitution. These are monsters. Number 1, you can only think of one thing at a time. You cannot hold 2 thoughts at the same time. This is huge. If a negative thought enters your mind, try to think of something else instead. Think of God, think of baseball, think of a beautiful memory. I have this great memory down at one of these beaches here, and I can put my whole body in my mind there and block anything else out. You can only hold one thought at a time. Okay. So this is really, really important. Okay. That you start to notice that, because the average person can't hold a thought for more than 6 seconds. So if a negative thought comes into your mind, you want to substitute something else for it. Don't try to get the negative thought out. Just think of something else instead. And that leads to the law of dual thought. This is what distinguishes human beings from every life force on the planet. Now we're talking about the real conversation, awakening the principle of power, but putting it to work. You see, nothing else on the planet can do what I'm going to tell you next, except the human spiritual being. And that is, you can attach any feeling that you want to any experience that you have. Example, mice and elephants cannot take pleasure in eating or not eating. You can. You can attach pleasure to eating or fasting. An elephant can't. A mouse can't. You can attach pleasure to sex or abstinence, right? Or celibacy, right? An elephant or an ant can't. They're going to eat and they're going to have sex. That's it. You can attach any feeling you want to any experience. This, along with the law of substitution, creates a power in you that Marianne Williamson talked about. And now it's been defined for you that you are powerful beyond measure, because you can take any experience and link any thought that you want to that feeling, to that experience. This is huge. And we'll show you how to get more information on this free. Okay. The law of subconscious activity: as soon as the subconscious mind accepts the idea, it becomes a demand, and your subconscious mind will work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to manifest the demand, accessing a reservoir of infinite resources. And I know if it feels like I'm yelling, this is the passion thing for me, folks. This principle of power, that there is greatness in you, is what this podcast is all about. And running these 7 laws of the mind, it just I get so excited to share this, and I get so mad that I didn't discover it earlier, and I want people to get it. So just a passionate guy around this stuff. So these are your 6 laws. This law of subconscious activity is so powerful because what you can learn with practice and repetition, which is why a weekend away and running across ice cubes or hot coals or fill in the blank, whatever, it's not going to change anything. Okay, here's a lie. It takes about 20 to 30 days to develop a habit. It's 64 to 70 minimum, unless you're in the habit of developing habits, then maybe 40 to 50, but at least 60. And I would tell you 90 every day without a miss to establish a habit. So I'm going to establish these habits of learning how to operate this mechanism. Let me say this word again. It's perfect. It was made by the master architect who doeth all things well. It's just been messed with by people with hidden agendas. A lot of what's in here is copies of copies of copies, some by well-intentioned people and some by not well-intentioned people. But some of those well-intentioned people were what? Taught by people that had hidden agendas or weren't well-intentioned. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't want to know what they think. I want to know what you think. What do you think? And this all leads to the granddaddy of them all, the law of growth. It's really simple. What we think about grows. This is actually, if you're familiar with the study Think and Grow Rich, Think and Grow Rich was actually written by Napoleon Hill. He actually used Hanel's book, The Master Key System, as a basis because he was just a 21-year-old kid when he started. Carnegie, the richest man in the world, became the richest man in the world by mastering the Master Key System by Charles Hanel, and he gave it to Hill. And when he gave it to Hill, Hill used that as a format and later wrote Hanel letters and thanked him. But he used that as a format to ask these guys who went from rags to riches, and he asked them questions. But what's really, really important about all that is the practice of repetition. Okay. And what they found out, they wrote an encyclopedia that they reduced to this book, Think and Grow Rich, and they masterminded about it in the Chicago area for about a year. And they finally figured out they could reduce it down to 12 words, which are: human thoughts have a tendency to transform themselves into their physical equivalent, which they were all excited about. Only a year later to discover that the master teacher 2,000 years ago had put it into 8 words from 12. According to your faith, be it unto you. What is faith? Faith is what you believe. That's it. It's what you believe. Okay. That's all it really is. So for 2,000 years and beyond that, the Buddha under the Bodhi tree said the same thing. We are what we think about all day long. Not what we tell others we think about, not what we'd like to think we think about, not the quote we read and we say we should think about that, okay? But what we actually think about. How do you know what you actually think about? It's easy. Look at the circumstances in your life. Look at the circumstances in your life. That's what you've been thinking about in the subconscious. There is a way with effort to influence your subconscious mind. Let's go back to our waitress who doesn't know what you just learned. Remember our waitress? It wasn't one big decision. Gee, I'm going to leave Minneapolis, go to Los Angeles, and be broke at 33 years old with 2 kids, divorced, living out of my tip jar. No, it was a series of decisions made where in her subconscious mind. Had she learned this and influenced her subconscious mind, then every time she was making decisions, they would have been made from what? A different vantage point. Made from where? From her heart's desire, what she programmed in. Okay, this is the real conversation. The real conversation is that you're powerful beyond measure, but like me and so many others, you've been conditioned to feel less than. Let's move to the politicians and why you're alive today. You're alive today for one simple reason, and a miracle. So let's talk about the miracle and the reason in that order, okay? The odds of you being born, okay, back to your grandparents and great grandparents and all that, okay, are somewhere upwards of 30 billion to 1. Okay, somebody spent like 4 years doing this, some scientists, between the chances of meeting and when they made love and all that stuff. So you're a 30 billion to 1 shot to begin with, okay? 30 billion to 1. Now let's talk about the miracle of you, okay? When you were a kid and you went to school, I'm talking about miracles now. The first thing in understanding your greatness is understanding the miracle that you are. And if you understand this and you're not incredibly self-centered, you'll start to see that everyone around you and everything around you is a series of miracles, which was Einstein's proposition. Life is either nothing or a series of miracles. And we start to see miracles everywhere. Man, does it get real easy to realize you're one too. And let's extend that miracle of your birth and what you are into each and every action that you take. That's what this podcast is all about. So let's make a case scientifically here, okay? The model that you saw when you were a kid of the atom, like I did, is completely wrong, okay? I'm not going to get into a big science lesson here, but the atom is 99.95 to 99.99% nothing. The space between the nucleus and the electrons makes it 99.95 to 99.99% nothing. How does it appear solid? It's simple. A regular atom, if it was blown up, the nucleus to the size of an orange, the nucleus, the electrons would appear anywhere from 2 to 10 miles away. That's pretty crazy. So what does that mean? It means that your 99.95% nothing doesn't exist. There's nothing there. How does it work? Well, the electrons move around that nucleus at 40,000 miles a second. Oh, wow. Okay, that creates the illusion. And the desk that you're sitting at, and the computer that you're looking at, and the chair that you're sitting on, also in constant motion at 40,000 miles a second, also 99.95% nothing. This flawless electronic cloud. You have within you approximately 60 trillion cells. Each one of those 60 trillion cells comprised of 100 trillion atoms that are 99.95% nothing, held together by this flawless electronic cloud. And how does it all work? Every one of those 100 trillion atoms in every one of those 63 trillion cells, okay, behaves true to its own nature. So any of your unhappiness, discontent, and unfulfillment is from one reason. You're not learning the lesson that your body's trying to teach you. Get in harmony with your true nature, which is perfect, great, magnificent, loving, and caring. So how are you alive today? Well, besides the 30 billion to 1 shot and the miracle that you are, think about it. If that electronic cloud stopped around you for that long, nobody would even see the atomic dust on the floor. Amazing. Look it up, okay? Everything we tell you here, look it up, okay? But anyway, so these people, us spiritual beings, have been walking the planet for about 150,000 years, we think, maybe longer, maybe less. We don't have to debate that. So you come from a long lineage of survivors, and sociologists and psychologists have always classified this survival as carrots and sticks. So the cavemen and the early people went out looking for carrots, meaning mates and food to sustain themselves, and sticks were things they wanted to avoid that would kill them. So they became, you come from a long line of great stick avoiders. Okay, your granddaddy and your great granddaddy and great on and on and on and on were great stick avoiders. And guess what happened over that 100,000 years? You have in you, and Michael Broderick has in him, and Henriette has in her, and Nancy Ottinger has in her. We all have in us, all these wonderful people that showed up on this podcast, they all have in them what's known as sociologists and psychologists call, quote unquote, a negativity bias. Meaning what? We remember negative things because we think they might kill us. We have a genetic, scientific fact, genetic predisposition to negativity. Let me say that again. Predisposition to negativity. Not a bad thing. It's why you're alive. However, you're not going to die by going to the grocery store today. You're not going to die by doing many things that our ancestors were afraid of dying. There's not a lot of sticks out there that are going to kill you. What am I telling you when I mention the politicians? Well, guess what they know? And guess what they know? They know all about that, which is why the campaigns are always smear campaigns. Would we all love to hear people saying, you know, my worthy opponent has some great ideas. Now, I don't agree with them on this issue. I would prefer to do this. Why aren't they complimenting each other? Because they know you won't remember. You see, compliments, think about compliments you get. You sort of say, oh, this old dress, right? You kind of slough them off. Last time you had a job review, they told you 19 things you did right, and one, they'd say, you're pretty good at this, we'd like to see it improve. That's the one you talk to your husband or wife about. Why? Negativity bias. We don't, you got 19 compliments, one thing, not even that negative. That's the one you brought home. And don't think politicians don't know that. And other advertisers, what do they want to do? Make you feel less than? Buy these jeans and you'll get the girl. I remember a commercial I was on for about 6 months. It ran. They showed a guy next to a little compact green car and a truck, and how he was going to get more dates with the truck. Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine what kind of a mind? What kind of a mind would go buy a truck because he thinks he's going to get a date? Well, obviously one that's been conditioned and feels what? Less than. Because what they're really saying is if you drive that car, you'll never meet anybody. Why does it work? Negativity bias. And you've got to think your way out of that by starting to love the enemy and work with it rather than get negative or be angry about it. So we all have this negativity bias until we become aware of it. So why do the campaigns get that way? Because you'll remember it. You see, if they compliment their opponent and try to pull us all together, hey, it doesn't really matter who wins, whether I win or my worthy opponent wins. Let's face it, it's going to be a great America either way. I think we should put more money into education because he thinks we should put less in. That's a good plan too. We know that you guys will make the best choice for the country. Wouldn't that be a great place to live? But they won't do it because they're what? Afraid of losing, because what do they have? Negativity bias. You get it? So by being negative, they know you'll remember. And you know what? Go to Twitter, go to Facebook, go to the news. Because people are hating on Trump, or the people that like him are hating on the people that are hating on Trump. And that's what we got going. And I'm not a political guy. It's not important. It's an interesting study to clearly see, folks, these people that run these things, they know that, and they're manipulating you. Learn to think, learn these things, and draw your greatness out, because you can make a difference in a few people around you who can make a difference in a few people around them. And that makes things great for everybody. So this is what we're doing here. There are no common people. We hope you'll spread the word about this. One of the ways that you can learn these 7 laws, one of the ways that you can get engaged in a way that will really make a difference in your life, is to get into a mastermind alliance. We have a course once a year called the Master Key Experience. And this isn't a pitch for the course, because everybody's tuition for the upcoming year has been paid. We have a limited number of students because we give everybody a personal guide, and that's everything. There's no charge for that either. The previous year's members, their lives change, and they voluntarily contribute to the next year's session if they want to. And so, but unfortunately, we have limited slots. So if you get to masterkeyexperience.com, the podcasts will be up there. You can listen to some winners up there, get their transcripts or summary notes anyway. And we hope you'll spread the word. That's a great way to thank us. We'd love to know what you love us to share with you around this stuff. We're not putting this stuff out there because we don't have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the same thing basically on every call, but you'll be hearing it from different people, how they took these 7 laws, how they took this idea that there are no common people, how they stopped the conditioning and created their own reality. And they don't live 9 to 5. They don't live with limits. And there's no reason for you to do that either. The question becomes, what do you want? Well, we'd love to know how we can help you explore some of those possibilities. So we'd love you to spread the word about this. Nice way to say thank you. Comment on the podcasts, recordings when they're up. And we'd love you to get over to masterkeyexperience.com. Opt in on the early list. We got a nice little gift over there for you, a 7-day mental diet that will help break the negativity bias. 7 days, hardest thing you'll ever do for 7 days, but shattering that negativity bias and being able to see through it is the handmaiden to the greatness that's in you. Peace be the journey, and thanks for being here. Aloha from beautiful Kauai, Hawaii.
Mahalo for listening. The Taking Charge podcast is a place that you can count on to receive the truth. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure to leave a review and subscribe to our channel. The show notes and links to anything we discussed today can be found at the website, takingchargethepodcast.com. Be sure to reserve your spot for the Master Key Experience. Early notification scholarships are limited. Mahalo and aloha.